Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring.
Hello, my lovelies. This is Miss Murder with another tale of terror for you. We are reading today from Fear Itself. It is a compilation of horror. Home again, Jeff Gelb. Bruce awakened crying. He turned onto his back, grimacing at the feel of the sweat-soaked sheets. His heart was slamming against his chest. He stared at the darkness of the ceiling. It was a darker night than usual for L.A. Normally he could make out the wooden beam bisecting the room above his head. Tonight there was no sign of it in the Stygian darkness. As his heartbeat struggled to reclaim its normal pace, he realized he had been dreaming, and what a terrifying nightmare it had been. He was at work selling advertising for Radio and Records, the music industry trade publication, when his phone rang. It was his son, Franklin, light of his life and the best gift of his marriage to Hope, his wife of 13 years. Franklin's voice sounded upset, on the verge of tears. "Dad, I have something to tell you, but don't be mad." Bruce frowned. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, but..." Bruce could hear the fear in his son's voice, a foreign element that soured Bruce's stomach. It was 4:40 in the afternoon. Franklin was at a summer day camp program. Had he scraped his elbow rollerblading, or was it something worse? It all poured out in a rush of words. "See, we were playing at the park, and we were making a fort in these bushes off the trail, and my friend found the syringe." Bruce gasped involuntarily. He'd never heard his son use the word syringe before. The boy was only 9. Bruce and Hope had always considered Franklin too young to have a talk about AIDS and other diseases that could be communicated through things like dirty needles. He felt sweat rolling down his shirt sleeve. And the needle was bent, so I couldn't see it, and I accidentally poked my finger." Bruce gasped. "Did it draw blood?" Yes, Dad, a little, but I'm going to be okay, aren't I? The kid said I'm going to get AIDS now. Am I going to die, Dad?" Bruce felt like the office had gained 20 degrees of heat in the last second. "Jesus Christ, what did you do?" Franklin started sobbing. "Honey, it's okay. You're going to be okay. Tell me what you did." Franklin cried. "I brought the syringe to the counselor, and she threw it away." "Did you wash off your finger?" "Yeah, Dad, but am I going to die? Am I?" Then, as dreams do, his jumped ahead months to the day his pediatrician had gotten back with the AIDS test results, and their worst nightmares had been confirmed. Against all odds, the needle had, in fact, just been used by an infected person, and it was still fresh enough to transmit the deadly germs to their son. Another dream jump, and he was at his son's hospital bedside, the boy now just a hollow shell of his former vibrant self, fighting for each breath, unable to speak. Bruce and Hope, devastated by this brutal act of an incomprehensible God, were mopping his forehead with a washcloth and speaking softly to him, telling him it was okay to drop his body and move into the light. And finally, with a pitiful shudder, he had done so. At the dream's funeral, Bruce told his parents he felt the entire event was his fault. If he had only warned Franklin of the dangers of syringes, how could Bruce live with the knowledge that his negligence had caused his own son's death? As if unable to handle the pain of the realization, his brain woke Bruce up. He felt warm tears running down his cheeks as he remembered the dream. Thank God it wasn't real. He was embarrassed that his subconscious would even dredge up such a nightmare, and he cursed himself for it. He loved his son. How could he dream such a horrifying thing? What the fuck had brought it on? The chocolate cake he'd had just before bed? He silently promised himself that would be the end of midnight snacks. Eyes still slick with tears, he struggled to see the lit numerals of the bedside clock. But they were invisible in the darkness. Frustrated, Bruce reached for the switch of the bed lamp, but his hand hit a wall. Where was the lamp? Had the cats knocked it over? "Hope?" he whispered into the darkness, his voice shaky. But, of course, she was doing a fill-in overnight air shift at an LA radio station and wouldn't be home till about 6 a.m. Bruce fell back onto the wet bedsheets, cursing the dream in darkness, then remembering his son, who, even at 9, still crept into their bed in the middle of the night. Bruce reached over, but felt only rumpled sheets and blankets. He bolted out of bed, suddenly aching with the need to see his son, hold him, kiss his moist forehead, listen to his soft breathing. Bruce stumbled around the room, knocking his shin against something, hissing at the sharp pain. What the fuck was that? He couldn't recall any hard-edged furniture in this part of the spacious bedroom of the home he and Hope loved so much. His hands lashed out blindly, searching for a lamp, a light switch, finding picture frames, bookshelves. Had he gone blind? No, there was a tiny sliver of light falling across the dresser he'd had as a kid, and he stopped in his tracks. What was that dresser doing there? It should be 3,000 miles away in upstate New York in his old bedroom, now a guest room in his parents' home. What the fuck? Finally, he felt a light switch and turned it on. He clasped a hand to his mouth to stifle a scream as he realized he was in his parents' home, not his own. He pinched himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. When had he come back home? And why? He looked around. It was his old bedroom, all right, with the double bed, the simple dresser, the bookshelves his dad had built for him when he was a teenager to hold Bruce's collection of horror comic books. Right now, he felt like he was in the middle of one of those stories where reality was bent like a funhouse mirror. "Dad?" He tried cautiously, his voice a tremulous whisper, still not really believing he was back home at all. But when he heard the snoring down the hall, Bruce knew for certain that he was back in his childhood home. "Dad?" Louder now, more forceful, though inside he felt more like a 13-year-old kid than his actual 42 years of age. He heard an interrupted snore, a grunt, and then the sound of someone getting out of bed. In a moment, the hall light was switched on. Bruce blinked his eyes to adjust to the sudden light, and then he could make out his father's familiar frame walking toward him, concern etched in his face. "Are you okay, Bruce?" Howard wiped sleep from his eyes and regarded his son with genuine concern and love. He set an arm on Bruce's shoulder. "Go back to sleep. It's the middle of the night." "No, Dad. Wait. I mean, I'm glad to see you." He put his arms around his father and for some reason felt himself on the edge of new tears. "I had the worst nightmare of my life. Franklin died and, well," he stopped, caught his breath. I'm kind of confused, Dad," Bruce said. "I mean, I can't remember why I'm here." Was that a twitch he'd seen behind his father's expression of concern? "We'll discuss it in the morning, I promise." Under the harsh illumination of the hall light, he suddenly looked much older than his 67 years. The impression Bruce got was of a very tired, stressed-out old man. It was a frightening vision, not how he saw his father, and Bruce averted his eyes rather than see him like this. "You're right," Bruce said. "It can wait. I'm sorry I woke you." He turned to head back to his room and then turned back to his father. He kissed him on the cheek. "I love you, Dad. And Mom," Bruce smiled. "I'm glad I didn't wake her. She could always sleep through anything, even your snoring." His father's smile seemed forced. Bruce went back to bed, somehow setting aside a million questions, and fell into a thankfully dreamless sleep. The smell of coffee acted as a natural alarm clock. Bruce opened his eyes to the sunlit view of his bedroom and smiled. He had so many great memories of this room, from the hours spent reading comics on this very bed to the first time he brought a date up here while his parents were out and made it to second base. Debbie Whitehead. Where was she now? Bruce jumped out of bed, relieved himself in the bathroom, showered, shaved, and brushed his teeth. He felt much better this morning, last night's dream already fading into the quicksand where all dreams quickly retreat during the daylight hours. But what am I doing home? He bounded downstairs in a bathroom his dad must have supplied. "Mom?" Bruce asked, expecting to see Muriel making coffee and eggs for both of her boys, as she always called Bruce and Howard, but he was greeted instead by his father, the morning light making little difference to his haggard appearance. He really had gone downhill since the last time Bruce had been home. But when was that? Coffee? You bet. He took the mug gratefully, added cream and sugar, sat down to a stack of pancakes large enough to choke a horse. In other words, his dad's usual portion. Mom up yet? Howard hesitated a moment. She's at her sister's. Betsy had a stroke a few weeks ago, and Muriel's been looking after her, remember? As a matter of fact, no. Maybe I'm having a weird hangover or something, but honest, I really can't remember much of anything, Dad. Is that why I came home? Because of Betsy's stroke? To help you guys out? His father joined him at the table. Bruce noticed Howard's stack of pancakes was half the size of the one he made for his son. Watching your weight, Dad? Forgive me for saying this, but it looks like you could use a pound or two right now. Are you feeling all right? I'm fine, Bruce, he said, putting a slightly shaking hand over his son's. The body contact was somehow more meaningful than usual to Bruce, who clasped his other hand over his father's for a moment. They both sat silently, enjoying the unspoken father-son bond. So, Dad, what can you tell me? I mean, I love being here, but I have obligations to work and my family and... Bruce, I've asked Dr. Broughton to join us this morning. He'll be here in about an hour. Maybe he can help answer your questions. Bruce's brow furrowed. Dr. Broughton? Isn't that the shrink who put Mom on Prozac a few years ago? What does he have to do with this? Suddenly, Bruce brought his hand down hard on the table. The pancakes jumped. Damn it, Dad! What is going on? Why am I here? He saw his father's face register what could only be called fear, and it chilled his spine. Now he, too, was getting spared. Is it Hope? Or Franklin? He grabbed at his father's flannel pajama shirt. Tell me they're okay. Tell me the dream was just a nightmare. Please, Dad, tell me. His father was silent. Bruce's eyes drifted to the wall clock. It's only 6:15 in California. I swear I'll wake them up and get to the bottom of this if you don't tell me what's going on right now. His father shook his head. The doctor asked that we wait for his arrival. We've been waiting for this day, and he said he wanted to be here. What do you mean you've been waiting? Bruce arose, slamming the chair against the back wall, and picked up the portable phone next to the dishwasher. He angrily punched in the number of his home in California. Well, I'm not waiting for Dr. Broughton, or you, or anyone else. He heard the connection being made, and then the phone ringing on the other end of the receiver. Hello? It was a male voice. Bruce felt his bowels quiver. Who is this? He asked. Who the hell is this? An angry male voice, one Bruce couldn't place. I'm looking for Hope Goldstone. You got the wrong number, buddy, and it's 6:15 in the morning. Look, I'm sorry, I'm calling long distance. He recounted the number he just dialed. That's me, and there ain't no Hope Goldstone here. Now let me get some sleep, will ya? He hung up. What the hell is going on? He felt reality slipping away from him. Dad, please. His father looked at his son and bit his lip and nodded. All right. I'm going to say something you're not going to like and you may not comprehend. It's going to make you angry and upset. But hopefully by that time the doctor will be here to help you. To help us. Bruce sat down opposite his father. Setting aside his hardly touched pancake stack, Howard took his son's hands in his own. Both of them were shaking, and in other circumstances they both might have laughed, but now there were tears in both their eyes as Howard began. You see, Bruce, you get a wrong number in California because you never lived in California. What? Are you fucking nuts? I've lived there for 20 years now. Please don't interrupt. You told me to explain everything. Now give me the chance. He took a deep breath and continued. The truth is, you've never moved out of our house. That's impossible! Bruce yelled, disengaging his hands from his father's. I work at R&R. My son goes to school in Manhattan Beach. My wife works in Hollywood. He stopped mid-sentence because his father was shaking his head. You never married. There is no hope, and there is no Franklin. They're just figments of your imagination. No! Bruce stood up again, ran back to the phone, angrily punching in the phone number for R&R. The phone rang 15 times before he hung up. Fuck, it's still too early. No one's there yet. I'll call back. He turned to his father. Why are you doing this to me, Dad? Why are you lying? I'm not. I told you we should have waited. Bruce shook his head. God damn it. I can tell you what songs we listened to while my wife was in labor. I can tell you how my son's hair smells after a shower. I can tell you how much money I made in the last 5 years. I can tell you what comic books I bought last week and where I bought them. I have 20 years of California memories inside my head. They can't all be dreams and wishful thinking. They can't. He stalked around the kitchen, his mind reeling. Bruce, you had a nervous breakdown about a month ago. We've been taking you to Dr. Broughton, and he warned us something like last night would happen. The nightmares, the fantasies. No! It was unbelievably terrifying. His own father was telling him that most of his memories were lies, the tricks of a diseased mind. It was beyond comprehension. He looked at his father, eyes seething with hatred. I want to see Mom. I want to hear what she has to say. You're lying to me. I don't know why, but Mom won't lie. I'm calling Betsy's house. He stood up. Don't bother. Mom's on her way home. I called her last night after you went back to bed. She'll be here by the time the doctor arrives. Bruce felt his world slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. He couldn't stop the tears which came in a flood. Oh my God. No hope? No Franklin? No life? Had he really spent the last 20 years of his life here, at home? A failure who finally cracked from the weight of his own unfulfilled dreams? It was too heavy a burden to live with. He wanted to die. His father's hands touched his shoulders and he twitched them away. Get away. I want Mom. She'll tell the truth. He walked away from his father, out of the kitchen, barely registering that he was in his childhood home again. He went to the front window of the den, decorated and early American as it had always been. Through watery eyes, he gazed out the window, hoping to see a palm tree, or better still, his son's skateboard in the front yard, or Hope's Mercury Caprice coming into the driveway. A car was approaching. It was his mother's Ford Escort. He strained to see her behind the wheel, but his vision was too blurry. Furiously, he wiped at his eyes, but the car was already entering the garage. Bruce ran to the house's side door and opened it as his mother's familiar shape emerged from her car. Behind him, he heard his father approaching. Crying uncontrollably now, Bruce ran to his mother. Mom! He cried as he embraced her, smelling her perfume. It was a familiar fragrance, but not his mother's. It was her sister Betsy's favorite perfume. Bruce stood back to give his mother a kiss and felt his world shatter as he stared into Betsy's eyes. Mom? He asked. Betsy tried to hug him, but he pulled away from her. You're not my mother! He screamed angrily. My mother is... Dad! My mother is dead! Oh my God! Mom is dead! And he fainted and dreamed. He was standing next to his father at his mother's bedside. Her face was frighteningly thin, her eyes closed, her breath shallow. Howard used a washcloth to wipe the sweat from her fevered brow. Tears flowed freely from his face as he did his task slowly, lovingly. Bruce kneeled at his mother's side and whispered, It's okay, Mom. I'll be fine, and I promise to take care of Dad for you. We'll be okay. It's okay for you to let go, to drop your body. He squeezed her hand but felt no reassuring return pressure. He wondered whether her spirit had already left her comatose body. In case it had not, he continued to encourage her. Head for the light, Mom. I know you can see it. Head for the light and freedom and peace and God. And almost instantaneously, her hand twitched in his as her body let go of its life force and she died. Bruce awoke to see Dr. Broughton's face above his own. "How are you?" the doctor asked softly. Bruce sat up, looked around him. Hope and Franklin came from behind the doctor, rushing forward to hug and kiss Bruce. He grabbed them both and cried into their hair as he remembered. His mother had endured open-heart surgery following a heart attack 2 years ago, and the blood she was given during the operation had turned out to be tainted with the AIDS virus. It had taken 2 painful years for her to succumb. In that time, Bruce had all but moved back to his parents' home to take care of her and her husband, Howard. Bruce reclaimed his old room and did his telephone-oriented sales job from their home. The last thing he remembered was her deathbed scene, until last night's dream. He disengaged slowly from his family's embrace and faced the doctor. Broughton nodded and said, "I understand. You want answers. You deserve them, and thank God, I believe you are ready for them. When your mother died, you were certain her death was somehow your fault. You suffered a nervous breakdown. It happens more often than you think. But in your case, it resulted in such a strong mental denial of your mother's death that you lost your grip on reality." Suddenly dizzy, Bruce needed to sit down. He fell onto a couch, the weight of the doctor's words pressing against him, as well as the reclaimed memory that what Broughton was saying was indeed true. Medications and counseling did not help. You turned more and more inward till you refused to eat or take care of yourself. You renounced your life since leaving home 20 years ago, claiming it never happened, perhaps feeling you could have somehow saved your mother had you never left her. Maybe you felt you could bring your mother back to life by killing the life you had created for yourself. You wouldn't see or talk to Hope or Franklin, wouldn't even acknowledge their existence. You built a fantasy that your mom was just away, caring for her sister, who is fine, by the way. Betsy squeezed Bruce's shoulder in support. The doctor continued. Usually, in cases this severe, patients are sent to a hospital where they can be cared for and given electroshock therapy to jog their memories. It was seen as a last resort way for you to face your mother's death and get on with your own life. But your father felt it was too risky and wouldn't allow it. Bruce turned to his father, who was wiping tears from his eyes. Bruce motioned for him to join him on the couch where he could hold his hands. Neither person's hands were shaking anymore. Broughton continued. He forced me instead to think in non-traditional ways. After much discussion, we decided to try an experiment based on some reading I'd been doing. Basically, we hoped that by making a lie of your real life, your mind would disengage from the false one it had created and shock you back into reality. After your nightmare this morning, your father called to tell me about your dream, which I took as a sign that your mind's defenses were cracking. That's when we decided to try the plan. A friend of your wife's has been house-sitting while your family was back here, and he agreed to play act when you called. I had a similar contingency plan if you had called work, and Betsy agreed to the impersonation of your mother. Beyond that, he shrugged, we hoped and prayed it wouldn't go beyond that. The room was silent for a moment while the weight of the information slowly sank into Bruce. Finally, his father asked, "Do you forgive me?" Bruce hugged Howard and they sobbed into each other's shoulders, a long, cleansing cry. Finally, Bruce choked, I love you, Dad, and thank you for your courage and for your love." He turned to his wife and son. Hope smiled sweetly and said, "Welcome home again." Thank you, my lovelies, for this enjoyable, if a little tearful reading of this story. Sometimes horror is not just about fear, it's about feelings as well. I am continuing on trying to improve. I do accept all comments, positive or negative, and I have been getting feedback, positive and negative, so I've been working on that. Until next time, my lovelies, good night.